Hello, YouTube. Welcome to part 2 of the two-part episode on the Shitzophrenia series featuring Dr. Eric Berg.
Hey guys, I'm back.
If you thought part 1 was pretty crazy, then with this video you will see that part 1 was just the tip of the iceberg. We covered 3 high-level points in the last video, and before we proceed, I want to clarify that I'm not saying Dr. Berg is a bad person.
Here's Johnny!
And my goal is not to make any personal attacks on Dr. Berg or anyone else I talk about on this channel. I'm merely calling out all the misinformation he puts out there so the general public could be made aware of how Dr. Berg's claims differ from what the vast majority of scientific research shows. Now, without further ado, let's proceed. Number 4. He confidently states that keto is a cure for type 2 diabetes and it's the carbs that cause insulin resistance.
And if you keep consuming this amount of carb at this frequency, the sugar is going to start to go up. Why? Because our insulin is going down, so the sugar is going to start going up. Over time, it's going to then turn into full-blown diabetes. How to solve diabetes overnight is just to understand several simple links, okay? Excess carbs equal excess insulin, which equals insulin resistance, which then causes excess insulin until the point where the pancreas becomes burnt out. Now the insulin goes down, and that causes diabetes, okay? So what do you do about it? Keto and IF, you guessed it right.
While it is true that keto and intermittent fasting helps type 2 diabetics keep their blood sugar in control on a daily basis, there is no conclusive evidence to state that doing keto and intermittent fasting alone reverses insulin resistance. Now, before you close this video and start shitting all over me in the comment section saying, I myself have personally seen my insulin sensitivity improve after I started keto and intermittent fasting, let me explain why that might have happened. You could see a lot of testimonials from people who say, keto and intermittent fasting magically reverse my insulin resistance and I'm literally off my meds right now. And as a bonus, I also managed to lose 40 pounds of excess weight in the process. Well, what research shows consistently is that it's the general weight loss that improves insulin sensitivity. Not just that, but other health markers like your cholesterol and blood pressure also improve just from the weight loss. Combining that with regular exercise seems to improve this even further. So if you find an improvement in your insulin sensitivity on keto and you also manage to lose weight in the process, then it's probably the weight loss that caused the improvement and not keto itself. You can see similar anecdotes of having reversed insulin resistance from people who lost weight while switching to a whole foods-based vegan diet or a low-fat diet, and it's the same with intermittent fasting as well.
At my heaviest, I weighed around 230, like I said, and I was wearing like a size 18-20. I'm now down to a size 12. Everything just keeps falling off now.
I lost around 10 kilos, around 22 pounds in 12 weeks.
2 or 3 different times in my life, I'd been up to as high as 340. I sit here today about 220, 225. I reversed type 2 diabetes with the help of 2 things: a whole food, plant-based, no oil diet, and Dr. Neil Barnard.
My starting A1C was 10.6. 3 months later, I got it retested and it was 5.4. I've lost 53 pounds and I'm continuing to lose weight. I'm noticing that people are coming to me and asking, so what are you doing? What do you eat? I need to do that too. So a typical day is I'll have a couple of apples. I'll slice them up with a couple of bananas. I'll soak some chia seeds and then sprinkle with some cinnamon and have it with baby spinach leaves. So that's breakfast.
I ended up reversing type 2 diabetes. You'll see the weight coming off because you will lose weight with the changes. Intermittent fasting is very important. It's a big part, I believe, in what happened with me.
Scientists are still trying to find that one magic diet that reverses insulin resistance independent of weight loss. Now, why is this important to know, you might ask? As long as keto works for me, who cares, right?
I don't care. Nobody cares.
Well, it is important to know this if you're planning on doing keto for the rest of your life. Continue watching and I will explain. Contrary to what Dr. Berg preaches, it's wrong to believe that it's the carbohydrates in isolation that causes insulin resistance. While it might seem like a no-brainer to assume that carbs cause insulin resistance because it's the carbs that cause a spike in insulin in the first place, the majority of scientific literature actually suggests otherwise. In fact, there's strong research that shows a high dietary fat intake to be more associated with insulin resistance than a high carb intake of the same calories. But I wouldn't really come to any conclusions on that either. During the mid-70s, there was a human obesity study done on 106 morbidly obese patients who were given a calorically restricted diet consisting of mainly rice with other high-carb foods combined with a bit of exercise, and each patient lost at least 45 kilograms with an overall average weight loss of 63 kilograms. At the end of the study, each patient saw an improvement in all of their blood markers, including their insulin sensitivity, just from the weight loss. If carbs cause type 2 diabetes, then these results would have been impossible. Regardless of the macronutrient composition, it's the overall weight gain due to excessive calories over a certain period that seems to be the cause of insulin resistance. While there is still more research required to come to any conclusions, we know for sure that it's not just the carbs in isolation. Although I'm sure everyone agrees that it's generally not a good idea to eat a lot of highly refined and processed carbohydrates, Dr. Berg is wrong to demonize all carbs, including the whole grains, fruits, and vegetables that are rich in fiber and micronutrients. The strongest connection towards the cause of insulin resistance is with visceral fat, which is the fat that surrounds your organs. Visceral fat secretes certain bioactive substances and molecules called adipokines, which are known to affect the way your body functions at a cellular level. Some of these adipokines are known to cause health problems. Your inflammatory markers like CRP are also observed to be higher with more adipose tissue being present in your body. The high concentration of a particular protein called retinol binding protein 4 or RBP4 that's secreted from visceral fat is associated with causing insulin resistance and cardiovascular disease. This right here is possibly the best research there is to understand what might be causing insulin resistance. Be sure to check out the links in the description for more information. Now that you know this, let's get back to the thought of doing keto for the rest of your life, being a type 2 diabetic. While visceral fat is known to accumulate in a caloric surplus in general, there is evidence to show that a high dietary fat intake in the caloric surplus causes more storage of visceral fat than with a low-fat intake of the same calories. However, since there isn't much data available to indicate the amount of visceral fat storage specific to keto on a caloric surplus, doctors are advised to tread carefully with keto until more substantial evidence is made available. This is part of the reason why real doctors are reluctant to recommend the keto diet in the long term, as it may potentially worsen insulin resistance if the patient ends up gaining weight on a keto diet. And yes, you will gain weight on keto if you're in a caloric surplus. Also, there has been no study to ensure that the ketogenic diet is safe for humans in the long term.
Ketosis is the only way to be healthy long term.
Besides, you hardly come across a 100-year-old who attributes their longevity to being in ketosis. This is why it's important to know that when it comes to improving insulin sensitivity, it's the weight loss itself that takes priority beyond the specific diet you follow to lose the weight. So if you happen to be a type 2 diabetic who's been gaining weight on keto, then please stop following Dr. Berg's advice. However, if you are losing weight on keto, seeing an improvement in your A1C, and you find keto sustainable, then by all means continue with it.
Be my guest.
Knock yourself out.
Number 5. He ignores high levels of blood cholesterol in your body, so much so that it almost seems like he advocates for it.
Even if you had 350, the studies show that there's still no risk for heart disease. In fact, I never ever look at total cholesterol as anything. I ignore total cholesterol. Even if it's like 350, if it's less than 350, I'm not going to worry about it if these other things are working fine.
You'll see that Dr. Berg stands his ground on this with utmost confidence. But what's his foundation to be so confident, you would wonder? Dr. Berg made a video about his wife's total serum cholesterol being at a whopping 261 with LDL at 195, and he seemed very cool about it. Here, he talks about this brand new guideline from the American Heart Association stating that your total blood cholesterol does not significantly associate with cardiovascular disease.
And this was in 2018, the new guidelines by the American Heart Association, okay? This is brand new. They said total cholesterol is not significantly associated with heart disease. That's the new finding. They just found out. Looking at your total cholesterol doesn't really give you a lot of information in relationship to predicting heart disease.
When you scroll down in his video description, you can see the link he's referring to, and guess what? His link talks about guidelines for dietary cholesterol, saying that dietary cholesterol does not indicate a significant association. Does Dr. Berg not know that your blood cholesterol and dietary cholesterol are two entirely different things? Well, at least now you know why he always sounds so confident about this. For those who didn't get this, your total cholesterol or serum cholesterol is the cholesterol in your blood, and that's what you see in your report. Dietary cholesterol is the cholesterol that comes from your food intake, and these are two entirely different things. The cholesterol you get from your food, though it does matter, does not seem to have a major impact on the amount of cholesterol that ends up floating around in your bloodstream, and therefore is no longer said to be directly associated with heart disease risk, and that's what those guidelines are referring to. People on keto, in spite of being on a high-fat diet, could still have normal blood cholesterol levels. In contrast, people who don't eat a lot of cholesterol could have high blood cholesterol. In any case, having high blood cholesterol, especially high LDL, is a cause for concern regardless of what your diet is. Studies show that LDL by itself is an independent risk factor for heart disease no matter what you eat. It's also worth noting that there's a small percentage of people who are cholesterol hyperresponders, which means they're more sensitive to dietary cholesterol than the average person. In these hyperresponders, a reduction in dietary fat intake, particularly in saturated fat, has been known to show an improvement in their serum cholesterol and LDL. Now let's get back to the keto guru on his wife's cholesterol report.
And we have the total cholesterol, which is 261, right? Check that out right there. And the second one that's high, LDL-C, that stands for LDL cholesterol, it's 195, okay? If we take a look on the second page, look at this.
On the second page, notice how he just casually brushes off the high LDL p-value, which is actually an important marker. I will explain what that is in a minute, but what's weird here is that he also just calls that LDL, like he doesn't even know what that is.
The LDL is 2,128, right? But let's narrow in on this one type of LDL, SD-LDL-C. That's the small dense, low density lipoprotein. This is the one that's dangerous, and it's actually 26 within the normal range. It's optimal.
At this point, you can see that he doesn't even bother to look at the humongous ApoB value of 131. LDL-P and ApoB values give you a direct measure of particle concentration, which is the total number of lipoproteins, and therefore these are the two most important markers to look at. The entire literature shows that the total number of lipoproteins is far more important than the different types or sizes of lipoproteins when it comes to prediction of heart disease risk. This is why ApoB is by far the best and the most direct marker as a risk factor for cardiovascular disease, and this has to be brought down to a normal range on top priority. In fact, if you look at the report closely, you can see that the first comment at the bottom of the screen is actually calling out the high ApoB as the first major red flag.
Oh my God.
But let's narrow in on this one type of LDL, SD-LDL-C. That's the small dense, low density lipoprotein. This is the one that's dangerous, and it's actually 26 within the normal range. It's optimal. So guess what this means? It means that Karen's high level of LDL is not the small dense type. It is the large buoyant type, and it's the small dense type that creates the damage.
Like I said earlier, since the different types and sizes of lipoproteins are not as important as the total number of particles, SD-LDL-C is a much less significant marker to consider after the ApoB has been controlled for. Dr. Berg's wife might actually need help, and he doesn't even bother to look at the comments from her report. I agree that cholesterol is important for your body, and nobody's denying that. However, there is an optimal level for everything, and just because something is important does not justify an excess of it in your body. This is just one example of how his wrong advice from misinterpreting the scientific literature could land you, his follower, into major health problems down the line. Number 6. Beyond just spewing nonsense, a lot of which he makes up as he goes along, he also contradicts his own information.
A cruciferous pizza. You can have it as much as you want. Just so you know, you can have this as much as you want. It will not cause weight gain. Okay, so we want to starve your body not of calories, but of the sugar to drop the insulin, which forces your body to burn fat.
Do calories actually matter on keto? The answer is yes and no. Certain calories do with certain circumstances. We're not talking about 70% volume. We're talking about 70% calories, okay? That's a lot different. Say, for example, you're consuming 1,950 calories per day, and you're doing 3 meals, maybe some snacks, whatever. It takes about 20 minutes to consume 2 cheeseburgers, medium Coke, and the medium fries, which basically is over 1,000 calories. But it's going to take 3 hours of intense exercise to burn off those 1,000 calories. However, if those 1,000 calories do not involve carbohydrates, then the rules changed, because even if you don't exercise. Those calories are not going to be turned into fat. And with being on a low carb diet, your body can actually use those calories as energy. Well, if the person wants to gain weight, you might want to bring your carbs up to 50 grams per day. Okay, that's one thing. Secondly, you want to increase your calories. You might want to add more keto desserts and more fat to your diet so you can keep your calories up and then lift weights.
Well, Dr. Berg, how is it that on keto, the calories don't matter when you want to lose weight, but to gain weight, you need to increase your calories? This is how it becomes very convenient for him to bring in calories whenever his BS theory doesn't add up. Also, according to his own theory, ramping up your calories by eating more fat should not cause weight gain because it's the insulin that causes weight gain and you're not spiking your insulin while eating fat.
How could eating fat actually help you lose your own fat? Okay, first of all, fat does not trigger insulin. Okay, so insulin is what makes you fat.
These are just a couple of examples, but you can find so many contradictions throughout his content that I could go on and make an entire separate video just on those, and I still would have just scratched the surface. Now, the right way to validate something with health, fitness, and nutrition is to look at the different randomized controlled trials and meta-analyses around the subject. This is easier said than done, as this is where the wrong interpretation of the same results leads to the wrong conclusions, and this is what the so-called experts conveniently modify to prove their point. There are some who do this on purpose to get more views, but for the most part, they either genuinely misinterpret it or they're just too dumb.
What do you think the chances are of a guy like you and a girl like me ending up together?
Not good.
Not good, like 1 out of 100?
More like 1 out of 1,000,000.
So you're telling me there's a chance? Yeah!
If you're a die-hard fan of Dr. Berg and don't agree with any of the points I've covered here, then do feel free to shit on me in the comment section. But before you do, make sure to look at the links in the description first to learn how things work in the real world.